Pieces to start with the star bloom. So as I was basically channeling a second ago, I don't want to be remorse about anything that I'm processing. So I sat with the energy and I went back to spirit and I'm like, well, what is this tightness in my chest? Because I wasn't feeling this before I started having this conversation. Is there something there that I need to heal? Is there some form of what I need to address? And part of the conversation came out, but then there was certain rates that basically came up as well. So I'm going to read these and I'm going to share what I channel. Pieces to start with the star blooms. I don't know if I said that or not. 521. Confirmation spirit. Excuse me, y'all. Thank you. So the first card that came out, it says Lone Wolf. It says, let the pack doubt you. Sovereignty is standing firm in your truth, even when you stand alone. That's confirmation of the last reading. Radical hope. In a world littered with chaos and darkness, choosing hope is the wildest form of rebellion. Self-sabotage. The moment things start going well, you reach for chaos. That's not a coincidence. My apologies. It's a defense mechanism. Not for sale. Your priorities are clear. Your values are non-negotiable. Authenticity may not always pay, but it always aligns. Toxic positivity. Positivity becomes poison when it silences the truth. If you're only allowed to feel good vibes, how will the rest of you feel? How will the rest of you ever feel seen? Release is power. Freedom begins the moment you stop clinging. Let it go with love or with fire, but let it go. Scarcity womb. Scarcity isn't just material. It shows up in how you love, how you trust, and how you receive. Are you brave enough to believe there could be more? And then I basically said, what is new in this spirit? Because I've been processing this stuff and I've been healing this stuff. And I wanted to basically be in alignment. And I basically said, well, what is like present energy? All right. It says self-care energy. Basically pouring back into yourself, not being low of energy, depleted, constantly cleansing, wanting time alone, recharge and retreat. Then it says Venus offer, romance, love, beauty, creative arts, wealth, harmony, attraction, and offer. Then it says twin flame, strong soulmate, telepathic, spiritual, divine connection. Then it says North Node, destiny, fate, evolution, finding life path, and karmic challenges and rewards. Summer, which is a timing card, activity, goals, progress, life force, energy, new pet. I don't know why it says pet turns, new pet turns. TERNS. Loss, and it says wounded, not feeling enough, missing someone, left out in the cold. And then it says self-love, intentions, focus on desires of the heart, self-worth, expansion, and manifesting. So one of the best relationships that you could cultivate, other than the relationship with yourself, is a relationship with the Most High. And recognizing that this conversation that you will have, this communication that you will have, this layer rate of listening, receiving, retrieving, and seeking that you will basically be able to embody in is a divine gift that comes to you in subtle ways constantly, as long as you open to receive. And that is a big part, is constantly being open to receive. However, a lot of the times we shut down and we close off things that we're being given privy to based off of what we believe that we have permission for, or access to based off of the permission that we're willing to give ourselves the permission for, right? When I basically seen, because it's a lot of these words were so amazing. The scarcity wound and not for sale, the toxic positivity, and then the self-sabotage. So a lot of the times, all of these other ones is like, okay, you know what I mean? Yes, not for sale, releases power, lone wolf, radical hope. We got that. What a lot of the times we don't want to live in is how we basically don't allow ourselves to be in our show up based off of how we're trying to put a positive look on things, right? The things that I've been through are really fucking ugly. And a lot of the times it's not really a pretty way to basically see it or look at it. Even though I allow myself to live in the truth of it, I may not necessarily show up in that truth because I'm not sharing all of the facets of that. And a lot of the times, no, we're not necessarily meant to come on put ourselves on a platform losing our shit. You get what I'm saying? However, being at a rate to where we get to represent all layers of what it is that we're processing and digesting, and be in the truth of that expression as well, is important. For me, how I basically align myself to not being in this scarcity space is recognizing how valuable all rates of my creation is. And that's the connection that I've been having with the Most High lately. Is basically me pouring out and painting. I recognize how I basically continue to transition, and the more I transition, the more I'm in flow and I'm in movement. And I was looking at the movement. Where did the card went? I was looking at the movement as a loss, because I recognize that there's this big purge, there's this big release that I have each time I'm basically going into another rate. Each time I'm basically going into a higher realm, and how I always allow myself to be at this space clean. Now, being at this space clean sometimes allowed me to be at this rate where I may have felt empty, or I may have felt like I was going without, because 5, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3. Thank you, Spirit. I literally heard it's time. It's time. I may have felt like I was going without, because I may have not necessarily lived in the spaces where I loved myself, or I anchored myself in the self-care, because I was constantly willing to push the boundary based off of what I felt like my priorities were shifting to. Because each time you upgrade, you up level, there's a rate of you that you're basically becoming more innately aware of. You get to learn yourself. You continue to learn yourself more and more, and being in acknowledgement of the different variations of me that are basically being acknowledged by me, because I'm sensitive enough, still enough, in order to allow this provision to be made for me to have this sight, right? There's this rate of understanding and clarity that lives in the spaces of moving beyond what it is that you see value in, and not limiting yourself into basically showing up in one way. Me and my daughter had watched the story of David. And this story, y'all, is so powerful. I wanted her to basically see how little things, come in a big package, and how they could basically take down a giant. I didn't want her to continue to see herself at this rate to where she felt like she wasn't powerful enough. And I knew that the story of David and how he took down Goliath, how vital it would be for her to basically be in that rate. Y'all, I watched the story. The story was so huge for me, because there was this rate of fear that I recognized that I didn't have anymore, right? But had I not basically looked at the story, I wouldn't have allowed myself to fully perceive how far I had come. And as I stated, I was basically at this rate of petition, and I want to hear you guys more. I want to hear my spirit team more. Y'all not talking to me enough. Y'all not in step with me. And I didn't recognize that it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't getting the information that I needed. I had already been communicated to, right? That's a part of the story of David. He was told that he would be the new king. And after that, there was a lot of time that occurred where he would basically get the sparks. He always had the favor. It would always be a rate where source was showing up for him. And he continually showed up in his many gifts, even though he hadn't necessarily been named as king. He even, started to work for the king and fell in love with this man and his family. But he wasn't what he had been prophesied to be, right? There's this rate of recognition sometimes that a lot of us don't allow ourselves to live in, because we're wanting it to be seen as something instead of allowing ourselves to feel what it feels like for us. If you get to a rate, you'll recognize, I'm different now. Not necessarily just like on some old, bull crap. Like I'm actually I feel different, right? I feel different in this spirit. Like I see these entities that are coming up against me, and it ain't no fear in my heart, because I know how you've been with me, right? There's this rate where I have certain rates of clarity to where I no longer question. And y'all wasn't being quiet because y'all wasn't gonna help me. Y'all was being quiet because y'all wanted me to trust myself, because I knew what I needed to know, and you had given me everything that I needed to have in that moment, in that space. A lot of the times in the new, you're being called to show up in recognition of all of the things that you've retrieved on your journey that were always meant to basically be that thing that would basically keep you in order for you to move ahead.